cool. There's the sound. What's up, everybody? My name's David Utrobin, and welcome to this Tuesday, November 26th MakerDAO community call. We do these calls every Tuesday, pretty much religiously, and the whole point of the call is really to catch people up on what's been going on in the MakerDAO universe. So we go over some of the most important stuff that's been going on this week, everything from governance, partnerships, and integrations, stuff from like the Maker blog that our team might have released, highlights from the community, developer creations, articles, notable threads, videos and podcasts, and pretty much everything you could think of. I try to curate it all together and give you guys access to that in like one really comfortable place. And so, yeah, I posted in the chat for the people on the call, but you could also find like an archive of all of the agendas for these calls in the Google Docs link in the description if you're watching a recording of this. So yeah, definitely check it out. I link to all the stuff that I talk about, all the forum threads for governance, all the proposals and polls, all the announcements, everything. So yeah, definitely check that out if you'd like. Sometimes we have guests on the call as well. This week we do not have a guest, so we're just gonna keep it super chill, super casual, and get through what's been going on this week. And also just a reminder to the people on the call, if you guys have any questions, want clarifications, want to talk about stuff, feel free completely to interrupt me. This is not so much a presentation for me as much, I love dialogue, so definitely mix things up if you got something interesting to talk about, or if you want to dive deeper into something. So without further ado, so usually we go through like the governance section first. So governance has been really interesting. So as many of you know, I think, yeah, about almost exactly a week and a day ago, the multi-collateral version of the Maker protocol was launched. We even have the man himself who deployed the contracts before the actual launch in the call, Mr. Mariano Conti. Unfortunately, Andrew Redden is not here. He's the community member who actually was like he actually got the contracts like working. He lifted the. Am I right in saying he lifted the hat on the executive vote that finally allowed the protocol to be functional?
He cast the spell.
He cast the spell. That's what it was. Yeah, lifting the hat was done before that. So the spell could only be cast. What was it, at 1600 GMT? Like the hard coded time in the slate, right, in the proposal. Yeah, nice. All right, cool. Yeah, so yeah, that happened last week, and since last week we've seen a bunch of really cool stuff. So I don't know if you guys have been watching the Sai to DAI migration very closely. I've been refreshing it every hour of every day since the launch, and we've actually just hit 20 million DAI, I think, yesterday, and I think we're sitting at 20.6 million. And I think Mariano actually brought this up, but in comparison, it took a single collateral DAI, Sai for Sai to reach 20 million. What was it, Mariano? It was like 3 months or 2 months?
It was like 2 months and a week.
Yeah. So the situation is obviously a little different, but nevertheless, it's really cool to see, this thing that our entire team has been just dreaming about and building for years, finally alive and kicking for this whole week without any major problems. But in governance, a lot has been happening. So the usual stuff has been happening. So there's been a governance poll that came out yesterday, and it's going to be closed on November 29th at 5 p.m. UTC, basically right before the governance and risk call on Thursday. And the poll gives MKR token holders the usual option to change the stability fee for single collateral DAI. And so there's a range from 1% to 9% that people can vote on for that. And right now in the forums, we're having a big discussion as a community about how to structure governance polls and executive votes moving forward. So, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that right after I mention the other active vote that's going on. So there's also an executive vote. That was launched on Friday the 22nd, and the executive vote was a result of last week's governance poll. So it's actually lowered the stability fee on single collateral DAI down from 5% to 4%. And that's sitting at, I have it pulled up here. Oh no, I don't. Thought I had it pulled up, but I think we're sitting at, what is it? Like 32,000 MKR. Yeah, we're sitting at 32,000 MKR. And for the current executive vote to pass, it actually needs another 10,000 MKR. So it could surpass the other two proposals that have like a latent 39 and 42K MKR sitting in them, which it's actually pretty awesome. So Stephen Becker was taking a look at MKR Gov.Science yesterday in one of our meetings, and he was baffled that 170,000 MKR is actually in DS Chief. Although not all of it is active on every vote, it's nevertheless an impressive amount of MKR. It's about 17% of the total supply is sitting in the Chief, which is really, really cool. But nevertheless, we have about another 10K MKR before the executive vote to lower the stability fee to 4% will pass. And if you guys are interested in looking at some of the data behind that, check out mkrgov.science. It's a really cool new governance dashboard that the guys at Protofire put together for our community. And so they're always improving it. So definitely give them feedback or like feature requests and stuff like that. And actually, they were on the call a few weeks back. If any of you want to take a look at the demo that they did for us. All right, cool. So in the land of governance, there's three important things that are going to be happening in the coming weeks. So there's a proposal right now to upgrade the flopper. The flopper is just the technical term for the debt auction. It's the auction that handles vaults that are underwater and prints MKR in order to recapitalize them. And so a bug was actually found in the flopper. It's not like a critical bug or anything, but I'll actually read like the short of the impact of it. But overall, the discovered bug has no effect on the system during normal operation. There's also no effect if no active debt auctions exist when emergency shutdown is triggered. So it's a super edge case. The bug literally only happens if there's a debt auction and during emergency shutdown. And so the direct impact of this bug will only occur if emergency shutdown is triggered, resulting in active debt auctions unable to be canceled during this period. And this basically leads to, I think, auction keepers receiving nothing in return from their bids. So yeah, it's just it's a really edge case bug, and there's a proposal to upgrade it. That's one, and then there's another proposal to remove the single collateral DAI MKR Oracle security module. So there's actually an Oracle security module, a time delay running on the MKR price for single collateral DAI. And the reason that the team is proposing to remove it is actually because it creates slippage when people are paying back their stability fees. In some cases, the user is actually overcharged for the stability fee, and in other cases, the user is undercharged for the stability fee. So in order to better or to more efficiently handle like stability fees and MKR in single collateral DAI, we're proposing that we remove the MKR Oracle security module. And Mariano, correct me if I got anything about that wrong, because that's just like the short of it, right?
No, yeah, that's exactly right. The flopper that we're gonna add, it changes one line of code. It's really minimal, and like you say, it is so edge case that we are gonna have a post-mortem, of course, in the smart contracts team to make sure that this doesn't happen. So we're increasing even more our testing and formal verification. So it does help. But yeah, we would need to have the system be shut down and debt auctions occurring, which they're not going to happen with our risk parameters because we need a lot of debt to even generate a debt auction, and we're getting so much surplus that.
Exactly. Yeah. So then Nenad is asking, so you are removing the OSM contracts. So no, not exactly. we're removing the OSM for the MKR oracle in single collateral DAI. So that doesn't affect the OSMs that are on like ETH and BAT in MCD. No problem. All right, cool. And then the third major important thing for governance is the final step for actually completing this MCD launch, which involves the token authority of MKR to be transferred. So right now the MKR token authority is, I believe, the foundation's multi-sig, and in the spirit of gradual decentralization, we are actually rolling out the next steps pretty much immediately to transfer this token authority to the chief, I believe. Or Mariana can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the authority is being transferred to the chief, and that way only governance will have real authority over the MKR token. If you want to speak to that or give any additional detail, Mariana, definitely go for it.
Yeah, just real quick, but this is like highly technical. It is, the authority is going to be given to another contract called the POS. So the POS proxy that sits in between the system and the chief. So the only one that has authority over the POS proxy is the chief. So essentially you're indirectly giving it to the chief, but the POS, what it can do is governance can set different timeouts for certain actions, which right now is set to 0. So anything that is voted on can be acted upon immediately, but we can we can set a time of minutes, weeks, days, months, whatever. So certain actions cannot be called, and this is the, what do we call it? The governance
security module. Yeah, right. Yeah, so DSPOS is the governance security module. And so the governance security module is actually the one that's going to have the authority over the MKR token. Oh, that's interesting. So, all right, cool. Yeah. So, and if you guys want to read more about it, you can check out the, actually I'll link it, but here's the forum thread that was put up about it. And also last week's governance and risk call goes into depth about the MKR token authority transfer. Wouter and Mariano did an awesome presentation on Thursday about it. Adam Powell's asking, is the new executive winning now? Wasn't too clear on the page that it was one or the other. Yeah, so on the foundation's front end, for executive votes, you only see 2 right now, which is the November 18th multi-collateral DAI launch that was executed on November 18th, and then the current proposal that's being voted on, which is the lowering of the stability fee. And so these aren't all of the executive proposals. These are just the ones the front end is displaying. And there's actually one with 42,000 MKR that's not visible on the front end that the current proposal has to surpass. And I think our product, and I think our product team is thinking about how to approach that. But if you want like a good source for total transparency around what's on chain, I highly suggest like looking at mkr.gov.science. They I think they sync like every 5 minutes or so, they sync, something like that. I forget, but either way, you could see all of the executive votes and the MKR in support of them. You could sort it by amount and all that kind of stuff. So it's a super convenient tool if you want to get a quick snapshot. Matthew Rabinowitz asks, is there any plan to have MKR on a specific vote expire after a period of time so MKR doesn't get stuck? Yeah, I remember we had this conversation a few months ago in the governance and risk calls, and I think there was even like some chat in the forums about it. I don't think there's any like active active work being done to do something like that. But I know that Charles St. Louis and several others are working on these this thing called the Maker Improvement Proposal Process, MIPS. So in the coming, basically in the coming months, we're going to see a way more formalized way that improvements to the Maker protocol can be proposed and passed through governance and actually like built and implemented. And so I think this is definitely one that's really interesting because, as many of you know, like continuous approval voting requires MKR in order to secure the system. So there's this really interesting game theory where if you have a ton of MKR, 170,000 MKR, and it's split up across like 6 or 7 different executive votes, then really anybody with 40,000 or control over 40,000 MKR can put through a malicious vote, even atomically, I think, right? But and especially like right now, like the GSM, the governance security module's time delay is set to 0, so I think that's going to change soon as well. But yeah, I definitely think that that is something that should maybe happen or go through the MIPS process once it's ready. And then Matthew writes, "Okay, we really do not want any whales to get hit by a bus." Yeah, I agree. We don't. But you know, thankfully, a lot of the other whales, like these funds and OTC people, and like they are known. So even if one gets hit, I'm sure we can convince the others to pick up the slack. Hopefully. I'm kidding, of course. No, we hope nobody gets hit by a bus. Yeah, cool. So that's about it for the 3 biggest things happening in governance, which is the upgrade to the flopper, the removal of the MKR OSM for single collateral DAI, and the MKR token authority transfer. We posted a summary of Thursday's governance and risk call on the forums, and there's a pull request on GitHub, so you might see it on our community development portal in like a little bit later today. But nevertheless, there's a summary. So if you guys don't have time to listen to the governance and risk calls, I highly suggest you do. They're super informative. I learn something every time I listen to them. But if you don't have time, we produce a pretty cool summary that's about a 10-15 minute read with video anchors and all, so you guys could explore around what you find most interesting. Mariano wrote in the chat, "Cannot do that with the current chief, but we'll be working on revamping it in 2020. In reference to Matthew's idea of expiring MKR out of old proposals, so that it doesn't like latently sit there. It would be interesting if like the MKR can like get auto sent to an already executed like new proposal. So even if somebody didn't vote for a new proposal, like it would make sense that after it was executed, right, they would add their MKR there because their MKR is like protecting the status quo of the whole system, right? That might be a cool idea. Anyway, all right, that's filed back shelf for later. All right, cool. So moving forward. Yeah, link to governance at a glance. There's a bunch of really great stuff there. It's a community maintained thread that just gives people a quick snapshot of governance. There's a few interesting threads that have come up in the governance forums. So there's one for a signal request. It's an on-forum poll asking how should we structure monetary policy polls in MCD. So definitely check that out and give your opinions because we want consensus from the community about how we should structure monetary policy polls in MCD. And then there's also a thread on the DSR and stability fee spread. And I think this is a suggestion from somebody in the community about it being as tight as possible to maximize growth. And Akiva, yeah, that's an amazing thread. Is that your thread, Akiva? Are you shilling yourself? No. Yeah, it was it was Sam's. So yeah, the idea is that if we run DSR at a rate that takes nearly all of the revenue from vaults, from the stability fees, then it's basically subsidizing a faster migration, and that would be like it would be like loss leading for growth basically. But it's something that Cyrus talked about a bit at the tail end of the Thursday governance and risk call. And actually Taylor, the CEO of MyCrypto, also weighed in on that at the end of Thursday's call. So definitely check it out. It's a really interesting conversation and a really great thread. All right, cool. And then there's another thread. Should we bundle monetary policy changes with technical changes in executive votes? And this is really interesting because this is exactly the problem we're dealing with right now, right? There's two proposals that require executive votes for technical changes for the flopper patch and the removal of the OSM for MKR. But at the same time, we also have active stability fee votes for single collateral DAI, and we're going to be bundling the stability fee votes for ETH and BAT, and then also the DSR in multi-collateral DAI. And so figuring out how we either bundle or separate these and what the pros and cons are is a really interesting conversation that's happening right now. And there's also an on-chain governance poll to talk about, or to actually like gauge the community's thinking on this. And I believe, actually, oh no, I believe the option of no, we should not bundle technical changes with monetary policy changes is winning. And I think it's like 60% to 30% winning based on all the other options. But nevertheless, definitely check it out and read. I think the community is leaning towards obviously separating them out, but there's also the fact that we hope technical changes and will be few and far between, at least for bug fixes. And then like the MIPS process will basically handle the actual real like technical upgrades and improvements to the protocol, which I assume actually also goes through the executive voting process. But nevertheless, it's a good thread. And then the last three that I highlighted here are, there was another thread highlighting an idea, additional financial incentive to get people to participate in governance voting. This has been a conversation in our community for a while, and it kind of always gets shut down with the idea of if you financially incentivize somebody to vote, they're just gonna like their vote is not gonna be like a quality vote. So they're not gonna, people can basically spam and try to abuse and game the system for like their own short-term profit and like not really actually contribute to the good management of the system. Like that's been the main argument that I've heard. But now there's a thread, so all of these arguments can be recorded on a single thread instead of just in the history of conversations that have happened on Rocket Chat and on the calls. And then so the last two were actually collateral onboarding applications submitted by Band Protocol, which is like, I think like an Oracle whitelisting type of asset. I'm not really sure. I haven't looked too deeply into it. And then also a collateral onboarding application by Phantom, FTM, which I also know embarrassingly little about. So I'm not going to talk about the projects themselves, but they filled out and submitted the Google Docs with all of the kind of preliminary questions that are part of the collateral onboarding. And so if you're interested in looking at how Maker token holders, or like what questions Maker token holders want answered, definitely check out those example applications. And also dig deeper, or maybe there's an easy place to find this thread, but there's a whole collateral onboarding process thread that outlines our thinking behind getting collateral onboarded into the Maker protocol. All right, cool. So that's about it for governance. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to definitely jump in regards to governance. Otherwise, I'm gonna move forward. So for partnerships, we had BitHD products integrated DAI, which includes an integration with their multi-sig wallet. So another wallet. Zerion supports MCD. So Zerion is actually a really cool like DeFi like app. It helps you track all your wallet's DeFi interactions and stuff like that. I met a couple of the team members. They're really great few guys. And then I also saw this morning, DeFi Saver introduced an auto migration tool for CDPs wanting to convert to vaults. And this has been like probably the biggest pain point during this whole migration, is that people are CDP owners wanting to migrate into vaults in multi-collateral DAI can't do so all the time because there's a dependency for DAI to, or sorry, for Psi to be in the migration contract. in order for CDPs to be able to convert. And so guys like InstaDApp have created these tools where they incrementally bring you over. Just every time they see some Psi available in the migration contract, they take advantage of it and they transfer that amount. And it's been really, really cool. And actually Nenad from DeFi Savers in the call, and he said we also have a partial migration implementation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's been really, really cool to see more like third-party projects and dApps building in migration tools. I know that they are incredibly helpful for dealing with user frictions and using these systems. Cool. So Mariano Conti just left, but he's actually my next bullet point. So I'm going to get into some highlights from the community, and Mariano's Twitter game has been on point because he had this really great tweet that highlighted the statistics for the 1 week since migration, and the statistics were 19.8 million DAI, which now it's 20.6 or something like that. 3.4 million in the DSR. 95% of DAI, multi-collateral DAI, is backed by ETH. 17% of Psi migrated. 1,500 vaults have been opened. 120 liquidations have occurred. 35,000 DAI is currently in the surplus, and 700,000 DAI is being provided as liquidity on Uniswap. So yeah, some pretty great 1 week statistics. I'm excited to see the 2 week and the 1 month and the 1 year statistics. So what's included in DAI surplus? Matthew's asking. So DAI surplus is a combination of like accruing stability fees, continuously accruing stability fees, and the proceeds from liquidation penalties. So on the 120 liquidations, that 13% liquidation penalty also gets counted as a surplus. And there's actually also so maybe I could share my screen for a second, but there's actually also like a system deficit little tab. So I'll share my screen real quick and I'll show you guys. But yeah, so this is DAI stats made by our very own Mariano Conti, and if you look, there's a system surplus here, which the surplus buffer, which the max this can go to, is 500,000. And then after that, every 10,000 is actually auctioned off for MKR and burned. But at the moment, there's 37,000 system surplus. But there's also system debt, and system debt occurs as a result of like funding DSR and also underwater CDPs. And at any point, actually, it's a public call. Anybody can call heal on, I think it's the vow contract, and it actually squares these off. So this goes to 0 and is subtracted from the surplus. Matthew's writing K. Not sure if DAI stats had a bug as it was bouncing around this last week and hit. Yeah, actually, I noticed that as well. I saw it at like 80K, and then I think one day it was just like down to like 30K or something like that. I'm gonna ask either Mariano or Charles or one of the guys about this, because yeah, I noticed that too. I just actually didn't ask anybody about it. Ed, do you have? I know Ed's in the call. Ed, do you have any idea about that?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you have any idea about like the system surplus metric? Because I know that sometime midweek last week I saw it a lot higher. I saw it at like 80,000.
Yeah, I think the calculation that was up there last week was not subtracting the system debt from the number, and that's why it was a bit different than it should have been.
I gotcha. So even when it was like the system debt was healed, it was just just never being subtracted from the system surplus on the DAI stats.
We don't start healing the debt, at least keepers aren't going to start healing the debt until we get close to that limit.
Right, the $50,000 buffer.
To get in the position where there might be an opportunity to start a flap auction. So then the actors who are running auction keepers would be incentivized to heal that debt to get into a state where they could initiate a flap auction.
Right, right. Cool. Yeah, so I guess it was the front end was not calculating it right, and I think now that 37,000 is correct.
Yeah, Chris fixed it.
Nice, nice, yeah. Cool. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it. Yeah, cool. So I'll stop presenting there. So yeah, that answers that, Matthew. Cool. So moving forward with some highlights from the community, some developer creations. We saw the guys at DApp Hub introduce chai.sol, which is a simple ERC20 wrapper over the DSR. And I think they're launching it on December 2nd. So check out their repo and definitely point out any issues if you see them. Let me go back to the chat. Matthew writes, when authority of the MKR token is migrated to the chief, it's migrated, so the authority is actually migrated not to the chief, but to DS pause. So it's given to the governance security module. We should have a Zoom call and cause the burn function to zero out the burner wallet in public. Yeah, I agree. So yeah, another really cool result of the MKR authority transfer is the fact that anybody can call the burn function now on MKR token balances that they are in control of. So the community can actually call burn on the gem pit, which is going to be fun. It's going to be a real destruction of those 5,000 plus MKR sitting in the burner wallet from single collateral DAI. Yeah, that's going to be fun. We should definitely do that. We might even do that on like the governance and risk call or like one of these Tuesday calls or something. But we'll talk with Mariano. We definitely Mariano's been super vocal about wanting somebody from the community to be the one to pull the trigger, similar to how Andrew Redden pulled the trigger for multi-collateral DAI. Yeah, definitely is a big deal. It's a milestone. It's definitely a milestone. Yeah, so as I was saying, the DApp Hub guys introduced chai.sol. So there's DAI, now there's chai. Which is so funny. Like I'm Russian and like dai means like to give and chai is like tea. So when I explain this to my grandparents and my parents, they shake their heads like this is like monopoly money or something. But chai.sol, baby. Love it. So it's an ERC20 wrapper for the DSR, DSR deposited DAI. Yeah, and then Protofire officially released their Maker Governance Analytics dashboard. They put out like a Medium article outlining some of the features and stuff like that. So definitely check that out. This is just V1, of course. And then the last thing I have for developer creations is that Vishesh's DAI.decipher.io, which shows the 24 volume weighted average prices of DAI. Well, used to be just Psi, but as of yesterday, it got an update to show both, or no, not as of yesterday. Actually, I think as of Thursday, because he had both on the Thursday call. But now DAI.decipher.io shows the volume weighted average prices of both DAI and Psi in that really cool bar graph that you guys are used to if you watch Vishesh's DAI analysis every week. There was a really cool article. It was an interview of Rune. It was called "The Next 10 Years of MakerDAO: Conversation with Rune Christensen," and I think it was like Jason Choi or it was the Spartan Group. Yeah, it was Jason Choi from the Spartan Group that interviewed Rune. Definitely worth a read. For notable threads, there were many threads about people not being able to convert CDPs and also not being able to convert back from DAI to Psi, and this obviously is because of the necessity for Psi to be in the migration contract, because Psi is basically used for CDP conversion, and once it's used for CDP conversion, it's basically destroyed because that Psi is used to close out the single collateral DAI CDP. So yeah, there's just a bottleneck there, and a lot of people don't realize it. So it's a lot of like user education about this like quirk, and thankfully this isn't like a permanent thing of the system. It's just specific to migration. So we hope to continue to make that clear for users. But yeah, we've been seeing a ton of that. And so if you guys, actually, this is perfect time to mention this, but if you're part of the Maker community, helping with like end user support in some level, like answering new user questions is super important. Like at the Maker Foundation, we don't have like a whole like customer support center. We're pretty much doing the best we can to help people that are encountering problems during migration. So if you are on Reddit or Rocket Chat and you see somebody asking a question, giving an answer is definitely super, super helpful and super appreciated. Yeah, just a soft ask. You don't have to, but if you're feeling up for it, definitely do so. It helps us a lot. Yeah, cool. And then for the last point in the community highlights, there's 3 different videos / podcasts that came out. So David Hoffman's POV Crypto, episode 97, was an episode actually with Mariano Conti about his experience launching multi-collateral DAI. Definitely worth a listen. I had to listen to it a couple of days ago with my breakfast. It was fun. Then there was also a conference call that happened with Stephen Becker, the co-founder of UMA, I think the co-founder of Staked, and like one other person that I'm forgetting because I didn't actually watch the whole call. Couldn't make it. But the recording.
It was one of the founders as well of Compound, I think.
Oh yeah, Robert Leshner was there. Yeah, right. Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Yes. So that conference call was recorded, and the link to it is in the agenda. So definitely check it out. Each person did like basically a mini presentation on the implications of MCD, and it gets deep into like the sauce, it gets deep. So it's worth listening to. And then lastly, on Laura Shin's Unconfirmed podcast, Stephen Becker came on and talked about how MakerDAO now features a risk-free rate, which is the DSR. But really, a better way to call it, as Stephen wrote on Twitter, actually, it was that it's more like a trust-free rate, because there's no counterparty, there's no liquidity constraint, and there's no like constraints on withdrawals or deposits. It's like fully backed all the time, and it's DSR is a really big deal. I don't think people realize how big of a deal it is. I don't think people will realize how big of a deal it is until it grows a bit more and exists for a bit longer. But yeah, the DSR is really, really, really cool. Yeah, anyway. That's enough of me with having googly eyes over the DSR. The last thing that I'm going to launch into before we just open it up for discussion or like end the call a little early is some of the real life events that are going on this week. And actually, I mean, Maria, if you want, you can go through the real life events to make the call a little bit more interesting, so people don't have to hear my voice.
Okay, let me open the agenda. Sorry, because as far as Europe, we have in Zurich on Thursday night at 6. We are going. We are hosted by Mama, and we are talking about MCD actually. So the launch and how it's going. Petru is speaking there.
And this is on the 28th.
On Thursday. Then we exactly Thursday 28th in Zurich at 6. Then we have Kathleen in Japan, who is going to this 101 DeFi at Ayazahi in Tokyo. And then there is this Killer App for Crypto at Crypto Underground, which is a meetup taking place on the 3rd of December with Lenka. No, organized by Lenka, but is in San Francisco, so I don't think Lenka will go there.
Yeah,
but
that's far for
it's
Lenka.
a meetup in San Francisco. But all of these events can be found. Yeah, all of these events and more details can be found in our website as well. So if you are interested, if you are either in Japan, Europe, or US, you can check them there.
Yeah, here, I'll link the events page in the chat if you guys want to check it out. But yeah, events all over the world, weekly, and they are a ton of fun. So yeah, anyway, and actually, I could take probably a second to show the Meetup grants program that we have. So so if anybody listening to the call is interested in doing like a small meetup with friends or anything like that, or even like a medium-sized or larger meetup, check out our Meetup grants program. We're very keen on helping ease the burden on organizers by helping with funding. So we do grants in DAI for people all around the world who are interested in doing meetups, and we see people using this program all the time. And yeah, it's our pleasure to help with that. So you could find out more about it on community-development.makerdao.com. I'll link the page for the program in the chat, but I'll also link it in the agenda so you guys can find it if you're listening to the recording. All right, cool. So 15 minutes left on the call. I think we're done, but I'm happy to open it up to people on the call. If there's anything that you want me to cover or that you want to pose any open questions or discussions, feel free to go right ahead. When is it expected to have BTC? Okay, so I assume it is the protocol as collateral. Yeah, so this is largely up to the community. I think right now there's like two candidates, right? There's WBTC and there's TBTC. And I think that both are a bit premature to take on as collateral right now. That's my own opinion personally, but I think that it's a matter of the community prioritizing it. So I think that there's going to be another like asset priority poll in the coming month or two, where the community, like we've had a whole bunch of collateral onboarding applications in the forums, and I think that as the multi-collateral DAI system hasn't imploded, the next steps will be to kind of regroup and think about the next collaterals being onboarded. But my guess is having like a good BTC collateral, I'd have to guess probably like 3 to 6 months from now. But that's totally like speculation. It's really up to the community. It's really up to how the votes play out in the coming months. Yeah, and it depends on whether people want TBTC or WBTC, or what they're more or if a new BTC type ERC20 comes out, that's even better and less risky. Yeah, so I saw that Simone Conti and I think one other person came into the call. So we're actually at the tail end of the call and we're having like open-ended discussion and questions. So feel free to like ask about anything you guys like. And I could post the agenda for the link to the agenda for the call for you guys, so you could see what we already talked about. Yeah, all the stuff is linked over there.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. So Akiva writes, when will there be another announcement regarding TradeShift? I actually have no idea. I don't know what's going on with TradeShift. Might ask like Greg from BD or something, but I know that they were doing some like cool stuff. I remember they had a pilot program and stuff, but I haven't heard much about them in the last few months. So yeah, I'll ask Greg for you. Actually, I'll do that right now. But in the meantime, yeah, feel free to hop on mics too. No, I am just generally personally curious what happened with TradeShift, if there's any movement. So I'm going to ask him anyway. All right, and if there's nothing else, we can end the call a little bit early. Oh, here's something. Hans asks, is there any time span on how long the Psi peg is aimed to be supported? So we actually talked a bit about this at the end of Thursday's governance and risk call. At the moment, there's no like set deadline for like emergency shutdown and like, you know, the end, the deprecation of the single collateral diversion of the protocol. I think we're playing it by ear just to kind of be conservative and not like panic people or confuse people, because if like we set a date and it's like inappropriately set, I think that just is going to create a lot of like friction in like the community around like communications and stuff like that. So I think right now we're keeping it as an open-ended date, and we're just seeing how migration goes. And depending on the rate of migration and the available liquidity of Psi and how market makers are feeling, that's going to determine the ultimate end date for single collateral DAI. But let me actually think for a second. So there's conversation in the forum about how we approach like managing the parameters going forward between the two systems. And I think that there is a case being made for towards like as single collateral DAI winds down, the stability fee will go closer and closer to 0%. And the purpose of that would be for market makers to basically be able to print Psi very, very cheaply, almost at no cost, in order to provide liquidity for CDP users wanting to convert and people wanting to move out. And yeah, but there's a lot of like tail end questions. So like there's also the question of if they're doing that, that means that ultimately they're going to be the ones who will be redeeming Psi for Ether after emergency shutdown of single collateral DAI, which actually is not like a bad thing. It actually might make sense for people like market makers to do that. So yeah, there's an ongoing discussion about how to like gracefully wind down single collateral DAI through using the levers that we have, that Maker governance has rather. But if I was to guess, I would say probably between 4 to 8 months would be my guess. But again, yeah, that's total speculation. That's just my own like guesstimation. Sorry, that was loud. Matthew Rabinowitz, many threads out there on Twitter outlining the emphasis to migrate early if you have a CDP. Yeah, as the peg will be difficult to maintain. Yeah, I think that if the peg does deviate, like there's things that Maker governance can do to obviously ease things, and I think that in all of the sentiment that I've seen in our governance community, I think we have a huge emphasis on protecting end users from things like slippage. So yeah, but agreed. Like there are a lot of threads telling people that they should migrate. They have a CDP as soon as they can, because there's basically like a race condition, right? Because you need Psi to migrate. Hey, Emiliano, how's it going? Emiliano, yeah, I hope I pronounced that right. But yeah, there is a bit of a race condition, and hopefully, like we're gonna play it by ear, because I know that exactly a week from now, on December 3rd, a number of big exchanges are gonna be converting their customers' Psi balances into DAI. So a ton of liquidity is gonna show up in the migration contract. And again, yeah, we're gonna be playing it by ear, and we're gonna make governors are gonna be very vigilant on how to handle it correctly. Matthew's writing, you either need Psi in the migration contract, or you could use your own capital to migrate. Yeah, agreed. But if you're using your own capital to migrate, you're buying the Psi from the spot market. So it's not as it's like not the best way to do it, or at least you have no choice, right? If there's no Psi in the migration contract.
Yeah, you can do it in an iterative process, which is what a lot of the folks who are in the help section need to be reminded of, that you can take USDC, for example, buy Psi,
right,
pay down part of your CDP, unlock part of your ETH, and mint DAI on the other side, and then rinse and repeat over and over and migrate it yourself.
Right, exactly. But it's cool that there's guys like DeFi Saver and InstaDApp that have like migration tools to make it a little easier and like a little bit more autopilot-y, because I think that process really mostly applies to like the really big CDPs, the multi-million-dollar guys. But yeah, it's an interesting case study to see like these different like size tranches of CDPs and like the kind of risks that they face. But yeah, a lot of open questions with migration. Migration is definitely a one-of-a-kind thing to be happening in the space and in general. It's like I can't think of like an analog of to the MCD migration. What about the tokenized DSR? Oh, Emiliano. So I mentioned a little earlier in the call, but the DApp Hub guys, Lev and Martin Dunfall, they actually came out with a ERC20 tokenized version of wrapped like DSR DAI called Chai. So it's chai.sol, chai.sol, and I actually can post a link in just a second if you want to take a look at it. So yeah, here's a link to Martin's tweet about it, and there's a link to the GitHub there. Oh, and Matthew just informed us that the stability fee in single collateral DAI just changed. So it looks like the decrease to 4%, that 10K in MKR that I said was required earlier in the call happened. I wonder if it actually was 10K. This is actually would be cool to take a look at real quick. So yeah, oh wow, so 20K moved in. So yeah, so at the beginning of the call, there was 32,000 MKR on that proposal, and right now there's 54,000 MKR on that proposal, and it's now the governing proposal. And yeah, that's actually really cool. Right on. Yeah, so actually now there's no spread between the stability fees on multi-collateral DAI and single collateral DAI. There was a spread where single collateral DAI was 1% higher, and that was meant to like incentivize migration of CDPs. But I think now that they're the same, it actually makes sense because CDPs have been rushing. So that spread, I don't think actually practically did anything. I mean, it did incentivize CDP owners to want to migrate, but I think they would have, I think they're trying to migrate anyway. But yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah. So Chai.sol is going to go live in, was it the 1st of December? I thought they said the 3rd, but yeah, maybe I'm mixing up like Coinbase's announcement to convert their side deposits to DAI deposits or something like that. But yeah, Chai.sol is pretty cool. Pretty cool. It's going to be interesting to see what it's used for. People are going to like transact with it, or if people are going to just use it as like a tool in dApps to move around side balances without needing to like make the extra step of depositing and withdrawing from the pot contract. The pot contract is DSR. So yeah, DSR contract. Cool. So yeah, if there's nothing else, happy to end this call, and thank you guys for coming. It's always a pleasure to do these, and definitely ping me if you guys have interesting guests that you'd want to see on here, topics that you'd want to see talked about or debated about even. I'm always looking for interesting ways to reformat this call, switch it up, make it interesting for people. And ultimately, yeah, thank you guys for coming. Hope this was valuable to y'all. Take care.